Now then, crew, welcome back to the Andy Mechanic YouTube channel, episode 4 of the Triumph T140 1978 and a half. In the last video, we finally got the gearbox all pulled apart, all the components, and that involved taking the primary drive to bits as well. We were a special tool short, but we managed to work out how to do it. Now, the next job, today's video, and probably going to bleed into tomorrow to be fair, is to go through and inspect all the components. There's going to be a long list. Remember, this gearbox has lost some teeth on one of the second gears. Not sure whether it's driven or drive. I think it's the second gear drive on the main shaft is the one that lost the 2 teeth. And usually it's pretty bad for a gearbox when teeth go through the mesh. You know, they work their way through the other teeth because it forces the 2 shafts apart. It can bend shafts, it can crack casings, it can do all sorts of really bad stuff, and not first apparent. You know, you've got to investigate, take measurements, that kind of stuff, to be absolutely certain that everything you're putting back together, all the components are actually they meet spec and they're in good order. So I think the first thing we need to do is to work out how this gearbox actually works. Which gears do what? How does the drive transmit through the gearbox for each of the gears? Here we go. Used.
You don't paint something without working.
Honestly. Ta-da! I had a bit of an epiphany. So I've put the lay shaft in the V-blocks, and currently balanced on top is the main shaft. And before we start, I'm just going to put a line on the input. Remember, this comes from the clutch and comes into the gearbox. And the output is via this gear here, and it goes directly onto the sprocket. So I'm going to put another line just there so that you can see that these two will rotate independently. Now, for first gear, and of course there are no selector forks here, we're going to be doing it manually. For first gear, now remember, this is, so the drive's coming in here, and these 2 gears are splined to this shaft, so that will be first drive and that will be first driven. Second drive, second driven. Now this one, as you can see, spins on the shaft, but it's engaged via the dogs. This is third gear, so that would still be transmitting the drive from the main shaft down to the gear on the lay shaft. So again, third gear drive, third gear driven, and again fourth gear drive, fourth gear driven. And here we know that these are fifth gears, but this is going to be the other way around. This one actually is the drive, so fifth gear drive, fifth gear driven, other way around, because it's going out of the gearbox via that gear there. Okay, so where do we start? Right, so to select first gear on this gearbox, the only selector fork that moves is the one on first gear down here, and it has to lock into this collar which is splined to the lay shaft. So when this gear engages the dogs onto here, it is, in all intents and purposes, connected to the lay shaft. This gear here is also pressed onto the lay shaft. It's permanently driven to the lay shaft, and you can consider it part of the lay shaft. So if we just rotate that round to engage, it's very fiddly, and of course it works a lot better when it's in a gearbox casing and there are selector forks holding everything apart. So I'm going to make sure that the other 2 are not engaged. Now I'm going to turn the main shaft, because remember the input is here on this side, and this is one continuous shaft all the way through, so I can turn both ends, it makes no difference. But I'm going to be watching the engagement of those dogs to make sure that we're free. And what you should notice is the speed of the rotation of the input shaft should be a lot faster than the speed of the rotation of the output, this being the gearbox, so the small sprocket on the final drive. So this is the output here, that's why it's got the threads there for the nut. Okay, it's going to be a little bit lumpy, partly because we're missing some teeth, but anyway, we'll give it a go. So just rotating that round. Can you see already the yellow line on here has already shot out a shot? It's disappeared around the back, but this one, the output, is turning very slowly. Now we have, I think we're going over the gears now, bear with me, there we are. Right, it's turning it around. We'll do one full revolution until one of the yellow lines turns up again. See, look, we're going around again with the main shaft, and the output is still way behind, indicating it's very low geared. There we go, look. So we've had about 3, maybe 4 rotations of the main shaft to get 1 rotation of the output. So for second gear, we need to obviously, it's going to come out of first, so we've disengaged the dogs between first gear driven and that end plate with the dogs on it. And we now need to move this gear here across and into mesh, because don't forget, this gear here is free to spin on the lay shaft, whereas this gear, the third gear, is actually splined to the lay shaft. So if we connect that across, that now mechanically connects this gear to the lay shaft. So it's now being driven, so we can pop that back on top, make sure that all the other, it's not easy with some teeth missing and get everything lined up, but we get there, we will get there, and it does work. There we go. Right, we're in mesh. So that one's engaged, that's disengaged, and we've got to be careful, this one needs to be disengaged as well. So now when I turn the main shaft, all going to plan, hang on, that way, don't want to go backwards, there we go, look. So you should notice that the output speed is now a little bit faster, and it's going to be a bit jerky because we've got all sorts going on. There we go. So you can see it's actually rotating as the output shaft, which is this piece here, not this. This piece is now rotating a little bit faster. So that's second gear. Okay, so for third gear, now that has now self-disengaged. That is now disengaged from second, and this one needs to come across. So now this top selector fork engages third gear to the shaft. Remember, on the main shaft, third gear rotates. So it needs to be locked to the shaft. So now the drive that's coming in on the main shaft through here is now being transmitted to this gear, and this gear transmits to that one. Now that bottom one there is already splined to the shaft, so we're all good. Okay, now remember, when it's coming down, so third gear is coming through the main shaft to third gear drive. It's going into third gear driven, which is connected to the shaft. It's going across. This gear here is part of the shaft, fifth, and it's transmitting up to fifth gear driven and out. Okay, here we go. So we're engaged up here for third gear, and we're watching the speed difference, so the input to the output. Just making sure that the other dogs stay disengaged. So you can see now those 2 yellow lines, almost, I mean the input is still a bit faster. It will break free, there we go, look, as we go around again, you can see it's a lot further ahead. And again, we've now got the yellow line on the output. So we'll go around again. Things are a little bit misaligned, but we're alright, we're still working. This will be a very noisy gearbox if it was the way it's the alignment that's currently going on. There we go, look, you see they're almost lined up. In fact, when you look down from the top now, those 2 yellow lines are lined up. So third gear, that's that one, and we can see that the output is quite a bit faster. Okay, you're all waiting for fourth gear now, aren't you? You've got bored of third. Okay, fourth gear. Let's just make sure everything's in neutral at the moment, so we've got no dogs connected anywhere. This on the lay shaft, the sliding gear here, which is third gear driven, will slide across and go into mesh with fourth gear. Okay, and fourth gear on this shaft is splined. So the drive comes in through here and it comes down through this gear. This gear now is part of the lay shaft, it's engaged to the lay shaft. So the drive comes in through fourth gear drive into fourth gear driven, and because it's connected to this gear here, so it's connected to the lay shaft, this gear being connected to the lay shaft also, the drive is now transmitted through here into the fifth gear driven and out through the gearbox. So let's give it another go and see if we can try and get a couple of rotations done without going into other gears at the same time. It's not easy. Okay, here we go. So we're watching the speed now. There's a lot more resistance for me to turn, but watch the speed of this in comparison to the input. Let's be very careful because things are starting to move around. We're coming out of mesh. Sorry, chaps. What are we working on? Are we in mesh anywhere? Yes, we're down here, which is good. And we've gone into mesh up there. That's why we've got two gears at once. That's bad. Very bad for a gearbox. Okay, so here we go. Stay over there. Okay. Is that touching? It's not touching. Okay, there we are. Right. We were just jammed up. We're missing a few teeth, don't forget. Okay, so you're watching the speed of this compared to the input shaft. There we go. And it's, I tell you what, it's near as damn it one-on-one, isn't it? There's not a lot. Let's see if those lines they have just lined up now. So it isn't quite one-on-one. The gearbox is collapsing. Oh, jeez. Okay, you got the idea. That is fourth gear. And we've engaged two gears at once. That's what was going on there. There we go. Right, we'll do a couple more laps. So it is slightly slower than direct drive one-on-one. Okay, we've just done fourth gear. We now need top gear. Ooh, Mr. Clarkson would like that, wouldn't he? Okay, so for fifth gear, the last one in this gearbox, we need to disengage fourth gear. So we'll just slide that across. There we go. He's out. He's floating. And just checking the rest of it. And we need to slide fourth gear drive into mesh with fifth gear drive, or driven, in fact, fifth gear driven. So now basically we've got the drive coming in to the main shaft, and this gear is connected directly, it's splined to the main shaft. So this will rotate at exactly the same speed as the main shaft. It's essentially part of it, and it's transmitting drive directly into fifth gear driven, this one, which is connected directly, it's all part of the same tube component, to the sprocket down to the rear wheel. So all of this now is in effect mechanically locked. The drive coming in to fourth gear drive and then into this one here, look. So as we turn it, these two components should turn at exactly the same speed. Okay, there we go, look. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put another line, just to confuse the crap out of you. I'm going to put you another line on here, like that. And so you don't get confused with the previous one, we'll put an arrow on it. And that should now stay in alignment with the one on the output, all the way around. Ta-da! See, it's still lined up. We'll go around again. and it's still lined up. Perfect. So fifth gear ratio in the main gearbox is 1:1. Interesting, isn't it? Okay, now the last thing to cover is neutral. So that's pretty simple. We just basically, all the dogs remain out of mesh. So we've got this one here is out of mesh with second and out of mesh with fourth. This one here is out of mesh as well. It's going to slip round, and hopefully we can get it's a bit finicky at the top. This one here is also out of mesh. So now it should be possible to hold the output sprocket, rotate the input to the gearbox, and be able to hold this stationary. Oh, look at that. So that's neutral. Pretty cool, isn't it? I always find that the best way, really, because you need to know what's going on in the gearbox to start to diagnose faults, to understand basically what's happened. Remember, it's a bit like a murder mystery. We're trying to work out why those teeth got broken off. Was it just, you know, a badly cast gear? It was just unlucky? Or was it something else that caused the gears to break? And that's what we're going to find out. Okay, next job then is, let's see if either of the two shafts, the main shaft and the lay shaft, have got bent. Now to do that, we need a couple. We can reuse the V-blocks, and we're going to measure what's called run out. Now I don't know if there's any specs in the workshop manual or not, but by measuring the run out to see if there's any kind of deviation in the shaft as it's rotated using a DTI, it'll give us an indication if a shaft has got bent, maybe because of this failure, or it might have got bent due to a failure in the past and nobody spotted it. We will never know, but it will tell us if either or both of those two shafts need to be replaced. Here we go. Now, to measure the lay shaft, the run out on the lay shaft, we're going to have to remove some of the gears. So we'll stick those down there, that way around, there we go. And we've got a little circlip just hiding discreetly behind here, and you guarantee this wasn't replaced the last time this gearbox was rebuilt, and that was probably not very long ago in miles, because it has only done 6 kilometers, about 4 miles, and then the failure occurred. So I have no faith whatsoever in the guy that built this gearbox up. Okay, so we'll spin that back around. We've got the circlip out, so we're going to stick him down there, stick him down there. So we've got first, second, third, and the only way to get fourth off is to pull fifth off the shaft with a puller. We don't need to do that, because what we need to get to, we need 2 smooth surfaces to run in the V-blocks, and we need a smooth surface ideally somewhere in the middle of the shaft, and this isn't too far from the middle, so we're going to put our DTI pointer down onto there. DTI is a dial test indicator, just for those that didn't know. Okay, right, to the V-blocks. Okay, we will stick him in there, and now I've got to get the DTI set up, so bear with me. It might require a camera angle change, probably will. Now I know that this isn't the perfect setup because the bench isn't the greatest, but it will give us an idea, and that's what we're after. Okay, hang on a minute, we need to come a bit closer. Is that going to work? Oh, we're getting close to the thingy, aren't we? Hang on, we'll just... emergency evacuation, there we are, that'll do. Okay, back down again. Dum, 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 dum. And if we pushed him out a little bit. Oh, there we go, perfect, look at that. Very nice. Okay, we need to come down a fraction, there we go. I think we're going to miss that gear, which is good. And now we can get our little needle with some fine adjustment up near the top somewhere, just because I'm pedantic. There we go. Okay, so oh, you can't see. There we go. That's better. Right. So I'm gonna focus you on the DTI gauge. So that locks in. Oh, you see, whatever you do, don't lean on a bench when you're doing measurements, because it changes them. Okay, so I'm going to stand freestanding. I'm not going to lean on the bench at all. The dial, the needle is zeroed, near as damn it zeroed. Oh, look at that, you see. There we go. Okay, we're zeroed. Perfect. Now, on this DTI, every little tiny increment is 0.01 of a millimetre. Yes, we're in metric. So, as I rotate, this needle's going to move to the left and the right. It could swing either way, depending on the distortion. Okay, so it's going to go left. Ooh, oh my, holy shit. Okay, so if we come back round, and we'll go as far as we can that way before it sort of starts to come back. There we go. I'm going to move the 0 to there. Makes it easy to work out, doesn't it? So the needle now will only go around to the right, it'll only go clockwise, and it'll give us a total when it stops and starts to go the other way of what the maximum deviation is. Okay, here we go. So that will be 0.1 of a millimetre. That is 0.2 of a millimetre. That is 0.3 of a millimetre. And if we keep going, it'll go a little bit further, I think. There we go. Okay, so we've got essentially 0.33 of a millimetre distortion on that shaft. And that's a hell of a lot when you consider the short distance from the end of the shaft to where we're measuring. And the same the other way, you know, it's quite a short shaft, and it's got quite a lot of run out. So we'll have to compare that to specs in the manual if it has got a run out spec for the lathe shaft. I don't know if it has or not yet, I've not been able to find it, but that to me looks very bad. Okay, I just want to put it back together for now because, you know, I'm getting more familiar with how this thing goes together. The more times you do it, the better you get at it. There we go. Right, onto there. Now we've got the circlip. So forgive me if I'm doing stuff that you don't want to see, but hey, it just helps, you know. Right, I'm getting old. Okay, so the lathe shaft is done. We need to do the same thing with the main shaft. Take off as much stuff as we can to get to somewhere in the middle of the shaft, which is nice and smooth for the DTI to run on. So, first and second drive, get rid of those. Stick over there. This one comes off nice and easily. Stick him there. Look, we'll stand them up. Now, that one doesn't come off, but this one we know does, because this is what was left in the gearbox right at the end. Okay, that's the output. Stick him there. Oh, look at that. And that one as well. Brilliant. So we now have a bare shaft. Honestly. Right. So I'm just going to give that a bit of a wipe with the rag. And now we can go and get this set up in the V-blocks. Chum! Okay, now we can't go all the way to the end of the shaft because it's got splines for this whole section, which is no use to us. So we're going to have to use this area here as one of the V-block runners, and right before the taper as the other. It's not ideal, we can't measure the whole shaft. We could probably stick it in the lathe and do something in there with it, but I can't bother to do that. Let's just check it for now on the center there with the DTI. If it's borderline, then we can maybe set it up in the lathe, one end in the chuck, one end in a center, and then run the DTI that way, and that would accentuate any kind of bend. But I think this is good enough for now, he says. Okay, right, we're coming down. There we go. Okay, I think we need to come this way a fraction more. There we are. Right. Hey, I watched The World's Fastest Indian the other day, again. What an epic movie that is. I really, really like that. Reminds me of my Uncle Ted. He's passed away now, as Uncle Ted, which is a terrible shame. I do miss the old guy. Very fond of him. Right, can you see what's going on? You can. Okay, I'm going to set that up. Let's get you a torch. It's getting a bit dark. See if torch will help us out a bit. Oh, look at that. Nice. That's perfect, isn't it? Okay, so first of all, we have to just zero the DTI. Now we don't know whether it's going to swing left, swing right. We have no idea at this point in time, so it's just like a preliminary check. There we go. Now, one little trick when you're doing this, you can see on the camera, we are going to put a little bit of oil on the two journals. There's one, and a bit over there. It just helps to make it a bit smoother when you're rotating it, you know, just to do it properly. Okay, I'm not touching the bench, and we're just going to rotate that round. Oh, this one doesn't seem as bad, does it? Okay, so that's as high up as it goes to the left, so we're going to move that round just for ease of camera. Makes it easy to add up and stuff, you know. There we are. Right, here we go. Now if you see a needle jump like that, it's normally an indication there's a bit of dirt on the surface. And we'll just double check we can go both ways. We can. So the DTI is set up correctly. This doesn't look too bad. Just give it a bit of a clean. I don't like that jump. It might be a mark on the surface. So we've got the very most like 0.02 of a mil, maybe not even that, 0.01 now actually. Now we've got rid of that dirt. So 0.01 of a millimetre run out is actually pretty damn good. I think the main shaft is going to be okay. If Alan wants me to stick it in the lathe and measure it centre to centre, I'll happily do that. Things are getting interesting, aren't they? So the lathe shaft needs replacing. That's knackered. It really is. There's a lot of run out on that. The main shaft, that looks pretty good. But remember, hang on, bear with us. Let's move the old DTI. Remember, we've only measured it basically from there to there. We haven't, if this section here is bent, we haven't even taken that into account. So if I put one end in the God, beard hair. Okay, if I put one end in the chuck, maybe make up a little centre that will fit in there, like a little conical piece that will fit in there, and we can mount that on one end of the chuck, and then that can go into a dead centre off the headstock at the other end, and then basically we'll be measuring it from there, and it'll give us a far better reading, to be honest. But I think we're going to be all right. I hope. I mean, there's still some other inspections to do on this shaft anyway, so it could still fail for other reasons. But time will tell. Okay, let's move on to inspecting some of the gears now. So this is the lathe shaft, and we've got first gear, second gear, third gear, fourth gear, and fifth gear. I'm going to pull these off. I've already taken a circlip off here. So that's first. Now remember, the other second gear on the main shaft, that's what broke the teeth. And if we look under here, we can see some pretty serious burring going on. And if I just tilt the gear across like that, can you see under there, there's actually a step. So we can torch you around it more for you so you can see better. There's actually a step under there where it's been crashing into the gear, and it hasn't really been properly engaged when there's been drive applied, and that's what's caused it to burr across. Either that or a huge amount of force. That's not quite as bad. And again, on that one there, we've got a little step. So that's going to need to be replaced. Now if we look on the corresponding dogs, so when this goes into mesh, so you move your gear lever to engage setting gear, and remember these are all sort of spinning at different speeds in the gearbox, and at some point they'll sort of line up so that the dogs here will go into these grooves, and it goes in basically like that, and you can see that it's made under load, it's made a hell of a crunch against there because it's not been fully engaged, and it's actually got a bit of a ramp on there now. It doesn't want to stay in when you put some torque on it. So we look around here on these little pieces, on these dogs. Can we see any more damage on there? Let's have a look. Yes. Trying to keep you in camera shot. See, it's rounded off round there, look. Whereas if we look on this side here, it's nice and still got its sort of right angle. Whereas here, because it's obviously been crunching into gear, it's rounded that off, and we can see a corresponding, if you can see that on the camera, we've got a corresponding little step just there, which will line up about the same kind of distance as the step under there, look. So at some point this thing hasn't actually been fully in gear. It's only been maybe a couple of millimeters of overlap between the dogs. It's been like that basically, and it's put so much force on the gear that it's distorted the contact point on both parts of that mechanism. So both of these will need to be replaced. This is actually third gear. So the parts list is mounting up. So I want to take a look at first gear now on the lay shaft. So we'll just pop these other ones out of the way, and this is first gear. Now usually first gear is a much stronger gear because it has a lot more torque going through it, and if you've got a bit of a dragging clutch, it usually gets a bit of a hammering because, you know, the clutch is cold, it's dragging a bit. So they make all the dogs and everything just a little bit stronger and bigger to cope with that. But I just want to look at the edge of these dogs again, because these are actually the engagement parts. Don't forget, the gears themselves are constantly in mesh. These are really the wearing items. When you change gear, they engage and then disengage again, and the wear occurs during engagement. And so we'll scan around, and what you find is that these edges here just start to round off, and in performance situations they undercut the gears. What they mean by that is they're actually undercutting the dogs. So rather than this be at 90 degrees, we actually put a very slight angle on that, so that when it engages, and this one, don't forget, engages to this end piece here, when it engages, as torque increases, it actually pulls this one in due to the ramps on the contact flanks. Whereas if they were shaped the other way, and hang on, oh, there goes a little bush, I'll keep hold of that thrust washer. So at the moment, hang on, there we are, look, at the moment when they're undercut, and these look to be very slightly undercut, this point here is further down than this point here, so you've got, in a sense, a ramp. So as torque increases, it actually pulls that into mesh even more. If it was ramped the other way, and that's what happens when they wear really badly, as torque increases, it actually forces these two apart, and that's why we start to see wear on things like selector forks, and we'll be looking at those later on. But there's some pretty bad damage on here as well. If you look here, look on this one, we've got quite a chunk missing now on there. You can see there's a piece missing out in the middle, and there's little burrs on there as well, which is all going to make it just a little bit harder to get the bike into gear, and it's going to, you know, probably clunk a bit, and it's not going to be very nice, in all honesty. So we've got another piece just missing there, and we've got a huge score mark running down this one as well. So almost like a fragment has got trapped, and it's just scored its way through as it's travelled past the dog. But you can see here, look, if we look at this one here, you can see there's wear on both sides. There's wear here, quite a considerable amount of wear actually, and there's also some wear here as well, which is quite bizarre because normally you only get the wear on the drive side, you know, the actual the flank that's transferring the drive into the shaft. So it's going to need a first gear on the lay shaft as well. Holy moly, that's 3. Now if we look at this piece, this is the bit that mates up to the dogs on first gear. In there, look, we saw that earlier on. So if we've got wear on these dogs, we'd expect to see some kind of wear on these as well, and we do. We've got a mark there, which that's not too bad. You can almost live with that, but there is definitely a mark there. And we've got on here, I'm trying to keep the camera in focus for you, we've got another chunk that's missing there, and again it's rounded. If we go over here, look, another big chunk missing on there. That one's not too bad. That's pretty much how they should look. That one's not too bad. It's a little bit rough down the inside. I could be being picky here, but you know, we're doing it once, so we've got to get it right. This has seen some pretty bad times, actually. There's another piece there that's got a piece missing, and there's ever so slight burring going on as well, which is bad. It all causes the gearbox to be really rough and not nice to use at all. And the old gearboxes need all the help they can get. Again, there's lots of pitting and stuff along there. So, it's going to need a new one of those. We're not doing very well today, are we? That's 4 of 4. Right. So, this is 4th, and this is the 5th gear on the lay shaft. Not the main shaft, the lay shaft still. And if we look at the dogs on here, they're not bad. They're not bad at all, actually. I think we can pretty much get away with that. So I just need to inspect all of the teeth to make sure that we've got no cracks or chips or anything like that on there. And we'll do that under the microscope camera. That'll be a lot easier to pick up any kind of imperfections, because now is the time. No, a bit of dirt. It was all right. My eyesight's not the greatest these days, so that microscope camera will be perfect for that job. And the same goes for 5th. Now 5th is pressed onto the shaft. It doesn't rotate independently to the shaft. It's fixed. And there's no dogs on it. All we need to do is just check to make sure all the teeth are good. And maybe, is that dirt? We'll have a closer look under the camera, can't we? Under the microscope camera. It could be an indication that some of the case hardening is starting to wear through. So again, we'll check that out a bit later on. You can actually see it on this camera. You can see the markings there. If that turns out to be damaged, then of course that will need to be changed as well. Right, crew, I'm back. It's the next day. I gave up yesterday. It was pouring a rain and I was getting tired. So, I need to recap. Yesterday, we found that the lay shaft, this one, the shaft here, has way too much run out and will need to be replaced. We also found that 1st gear, 2nd gear and 3rd gear, they've all failed their inspection as well, as has this end piece here. They will all need to be replaced. We haven't done any inspection on the 5th gear or 4th as of yet, so we've still got those to do, and what we'll do is we'll look at those more closely very shortly. As regards the main shaft, the run out on the main shaft is, I believe, acceptable. Although yet I'm still to find a tolerance, but 0.01 of a millimeter deflection I believe is pretty good. But we still need to do a final test of the run out in the lathe, I think. And of course we need to check all the splines and bearing surfaces and bits and pieces are all also good before we can decide that we can reuse this shaft. We still need to inspect the gears on this shaft, on the main shaft. Obviously 1st and 2nd is junk because, well, it's missing a few teeth on 2nd gear, so we know we need a new one of those. We've still got 3rd gear to inspect, and 4th, and of course 5th. So let's crack on and inspect these 3 now, and then we'll do the last 2 back on the lay shaft. Sorry for jumping around a little bit, but it's the easiest way of doing it. Okay, let's take a closer look. Okay. So 1st, 2nd is junk because of those missing teeth. Right, so let's take a look at 3rd gear on the main shaft. This is 3rd gear drive, we'd call this. And first of all, let's look at the dogs, because you know they're the highest wearing part of the gears. Little bit rounded on there, to be fair, on that one. That one's pretty good. Pretty good. Oh, it's got a bit of a bit rough along there on that edge, and on that one. A good indication is burring. So if you run your sharp edge across here, or your thumbnail, you can use that if you want, if you haven't got a stick. Yeah, there you are. You hear that? So that's proof that there is a burr on the edge of there. So, realistically, should we replace it? Well, in an ideal world, we should. What else? So, are you in focus? I think you're in focus. I'm just looking across these teeth now. What we'll do this under the microscope camera as well, very shortly, because I want to get a really good view of what's going on. But if there's anything obvious, we can discount it, and we need to look under the microscope camera at the ones that are a bit iffy. And don't forget, there's been a couple of teeth floating around this gearbox, and they could have gone through, or bits of debris could have gone through any of these gears, through the mesh, and caused damage to the face of the gear, each of the teeth. So, that doesn't look too bad. I mean, it's not going to be doing a million miles, this bike, don't forget, so it's only a sort of collector's bike now. Gets ridden every now and again. If we flip the gear around, we can do the other side of the teeth. I keep seeing little shiny marks, just like on there, look. That, I think, is probably where a bit of shrapnel was just brushed on it and got caught. An indication of the wear on a tooth is how wide this margin is here, look. You see it's quite wide on there? So I think there's a bit of life left in this gear yet, as regards wear. See down there, look, that looks like a pit. Oh no, it's just dirt. We're alright. We're still good. To camera, Andy, to camera. It's important. People need to see what you're seeing. There's just little rough areas here and there, you know. It's not super smooth, which obviously creates a lot more noise from the gearbox when you've got teeth that aren't nice and smooth. But in the main, I mean, the bush looks pretty good. Can't see any problems with that. We'll check the wear and the slop of the gear on the shaft later on. Hopefully I remember to do it to camera as well, which would be good. Yeah, there's quite a chunk out of there, look, on that bit. So, actually, no, that's bad. There, look. Oh, wow. Holy moly. How did I not see that earlier on? Look at this. Right, that's a definite fail. Okay, so no need to inspect that any further. It's now definitely failed. Third gear is also shot on the main shaft. So that's first, second, third on the lay and the main shaft will have to be replaced. Okay, let's pull fifth off. We'll leave fifth for a minute, because that's quite a complicated gear. There's bearings and all sorts of stuff in there. And put the main shaft to one side. And now what we're looking at is fourth gear drive. So fourth gear on the main shaft. So again, let's start with the dogs. There's some marks on. Oh no. Can you see that? There's some pretty serious pitting on that flank there, on that face. Now that could just be down to a bad casting, to be honest. It looks like it's quite aerated as the casting in that area, but that needs to be good and strong, because that's going to be a weak point, and there's a chance that part of that dog could just crack off because of that damage, or that imperfection in this case. Let's keep going, see if we can find any more telltale signs. And some people might say I'm being too picky, you know, but I've been given the remit to get this gearbox right, and to, you know, and do it once, and for it to work properly at the end. So I've got to make sure that I'm right, and to replace anything that looks suspect. That's the bottom line. Okay, so we know we've got imperfect casting by the looks of it on one of those flanks, that one there, look. What are the teeth like? Now don't forget we've got some dogs on this side as well, which would engage into the 5th gear. They actually engage into there like that, you see, look. So what are these like? It could, oh, look at that. That's actually, oh, sorry, it's a bit of shrapnel that's just hanging around. Okay. Is that one any good? Is that one any good? Little tiny bit of burring on there, and all this burring makes it just a little bit harder to get these gears into mesh, these dogs. I mean, God knows how old these gears are as well. They could be very old. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've seen a lot worse condition gears than this come out of gearboxes, but obviously, you know, they need to be replaced if there's a problem. I think we're very much borderline at the moment with this one. And they're not cheaper gears. The price soon adds up when you start doing gearboxes. All depends really how much Alan wants to pay, doesn't it? How much money does he want to sink into this particular bike? So I'm just checking the actual teeth now, see if we can find any imperfections on any of those. Just quickly scanning through, and if the gear passes this initial inspection, then it'll go under the microscope camera for a final check. Otherwise, there's no point in doing any more checks on ones that we've already, you know, identified as being a fail. Just a bit of dirt, right. Yeah, a bit more dirt. Sorry, camera. Let's just move torch a bit closer, I think. There we go. Okay, well, I think this gear there is a bit of burring actually on the top of the gear, just here, on there. It could just be a machining process. Yeah, so when they made this gear, I think the tool, the cutter, was going from the top here downwards because there's a slight burr on the underside. And that's not an issue, that burr's fine. But I'm not over happy with the little burrs on the top of the teeth. That could be an indication that they're starting to wear. And 4th gear, you know, you're going to be in that for a lot longer than you are the lower gears, just cruising around. So possibly not over happy with that one. I would prefer to replace it if we can. Now lastly, 5th gear. Okay, so this sits in the gearbox like that, and the main shaft connects to the clutch at this end. Now you can still see the remnants of all this sealant that the guy decided to put on, and maybe that's standard, I don't know. Maybe you have to put the sealant in there to stop the oil leaking out the gearbox. It could just be the way they are, but it seems very odd. It really does. Anyway, back to the gear. Let's try and get everything lined up for you again. That's going to work. That's going to work pretty well. So what we'll do first of all, let's check the dogs first. Is that sealant? It is. Phew. Okay. Get rid of that. So the dogs. Don't look too bad actually. So this would only ever engage when you go into 5th. The dogs come across and engage onto here, and we saw that when we were doing the sort of the drive train, the power flow through the gearbox. I mean, it's got little marks down there, hasn't it? It's not a nice sharp edge like it should be, but it's not over bad. What's the other side like? They're mint, so you can tell which is the drive side, can't you? And obviously, you see, when you go into overrun, you come off the throttle and you're using engine braking, then of course this will clunk to the other side and you'll get your engine braking on the other side of the flank. So they really need to, all sides need to be pretty good, to be fair. So you need to look at both sides of each of the dogs. And they don't look too bad. They're sort of, I would say that they're a pass. And this will be quite an expensive component. There's a lot of machining going on to make up one of these. Plus, if we renew it, we've got bearings to replace, and there's a seal at this end as well. So there's a lot to do, and a lot more parts if we have to replace this part. Those threads look pretty good. We had no problems at all getting the nut off, after hammering it a few thousand times. And the splines look okay. You see any problems with the splines? I can't see any problems. These are the splines for the sprocket. Is that wear? Or is it machining? It's got like a coppery kind of finish to it, hasn't it? It's weird, that. Must be a coating they put on them. No, I think that's machining. That little ridge there, that's fine. Okay. Obviously the bearings will need to be flushed out. There'll be all sorts of crap in there, no doubt. Can we see down there? Oh, there you are, look. Get torchy on the job. Yeah, they need a bit of a flush out. But the good thing is all the rollers are in place and they look to be intact. Okay. So this one will need to go under the microscope camera. I think what we'll do is we'll do fourth gear as well under the microscope. So that's the main shaft out of the way. We know that they're junk. And if we pull off all these off the lay shaft, which of course we're going to need the circlip pliers again. And yes, it'll be getting a new circlip when we build it up, don't worry. I'm not that bad. Right, so we also know that on the... In fact, I'll do it that way around because that's how we've done it before. First, second, third of the lay shaft, they are all... Everything down there, apart from the little thrust washer, everything down there is also junk. So we've still got fourth and fifth. Now we can't get fourth off the shaft at the moment. We need to use a puller for that. So we may still be doing that. But what we can do first of all is just inspect fourth gear. And first of all, let's look at the dogs on there. That feels pretty good. That actually looks really good, does that one? Okay, and the other sides. Very smooth. Very smooth, lovely 90-degree on there as well. It's really good. So I think the dogs themselves are fine. Now let's inspect the teeth. See if we can spot anything on the teeth that might be a little bit untoward. Now you've got to shout out if you see something that I miss. I'll stick it in the comments. See again there, look, there's just a little bit of a burr mark on that tooth. See how it shines in the light? Almost like a bit of shrapnel's gone through, you know, a fragment has just caused it to burr over a little bit. And you can be so careful when you build gearboxes because customers don't want them to be noisy or whine, and the slightest imperfection can cause that. It doesn't always have to be wear on the teeth, you know, or misalignment. Okay, they look pretty good that way round. Let's just flick it around and check the other side. And I hope to God the camera stays in focus for you because it doesn't like shiny stuff sometimes. actually looks pretty good. And if you're not too sure where you started, you can always put like a yellow line on top of one of the teeth, and that way you know that you've done a full cycle of the gear. See, that's got a burr on that part of the tooth, but over here no burr. So it's obviously wasn't like that when it was brand new. Something has caused it to burr on that area. Interesting. Okay, and while it's on the shaft, we might as well feel the slop of that bush. So I'm just going to try and move it from side to side, and I actually can't feel any slop whatsoever. Actually, that bush is really good in there. I'm assuming it's a bush. It might be a needle roller, I don't know. It feels really, really good. I can't feel... Oh, I can see... Hang on, bear with me. There we are. It had stiction against the fifth gear, so I've pulled it away from fifth, and now so I can move it from side to side slightly. And there's probably a measurement that we'll need to take with that as well, possibly if it's in the manual. How much movement there can be, permissible movement, and there is a little bit. You see there? Look, there's a little tiny bit of side to side. So again, we need to make sure that's within spec, but that would be a bush thing, not a gear thing, unless you can't buy the bush separate, which you probably can. Obviously, fifth gear is fixed to the shaft. It's splined. See down there, look, it's splined to the shaft. So there's no dogs to worry about. All we need to do now is look at the actual teeth themselves, and I've got to rotate the shaft for this one. And I just want to check, keeping the camera in focus for you. I just want to check to see what kind of condition they're in. And don't forget, there's a lot of all drive, other than fifth from memory. All drive goes through this gear. Even though we call it fifth gear, all drive goes through it. So it's had quite a bit of use, you know. In which case we should check for burrs, which there is. Slight burring on the peak of the tooth. I call that the margin. So where's the other one? So that connects, because we're on the lay shaft now, that connects to this gear here. So it connects, that's the tooth contact. Obviously we don't know how far apart they are, so we don't know how much backlash there is. Backlash is what we call that slop there, look, from side to side. And we could only tell that when it's actually mounted into the gearbox and assembled. You should never have the teeth wedged totally together, because it forces the oil out and causes them to wear. You have to have a little bit of backlash to allow for an oil film between the two components. So it can be very hard to tell how much wear there is. One thing I will notice, or I have noticed, is there's a burr on the base of the tooth there, look. But there's hardly any burr on this side. So this is probably the normal drive side. So the sprocket rotates in this direction to drive the bike forwards, which means that this tooth will be pushed on that side. So it will be like that. So the drive side is this side here. Obviously you'll get, you know, the tooth contact switches to the other side of the tooth on overrun. No, I think that's a machining. I think that's the remnants of the machining as opposed to wear. Okay, flick it round. Let's check this side. Where did he go? Thought I saw some dirt then. Is that dirt or is it imperfection? Dirt. Dirt's fine. I mean, I could have washed them all beforehand. It's always a good idea, but you know, we can work around that. No point in washing stuff that we know is junk. Okay, so it looks like preliminary inspection. It looks like this gear, 5th gear, the output, is actually okay, which is good news because that will be very expensive. Okay. Golly gosh. So we're maybe not too sure about that one. That's sort of borderline. 4th gear. 5th gear, okay. All the rest, junk. Oakley, right. I just want to make a quick summary of what we've found so far. So, on the main shaft, obviously gears 1 and gear 2 are together, and they have failed the initial inspection. They will need to be replaced. They go together, obviously. And 3rd gear has also failed the inspection on the dogs, so we can put a cross through that. 4th gear, well, that was sort of borderline. You know, I'd like to fit a new one, but I have to be able to justify the expense. So at the moment, on the initial inspection, we'll put that down as a question mark. And on the initial inspection, 5th gear, even though it's quite an intricate component and there's a lot of things to check, the initial visual inspection, that was a pass. So we'll give that a tick. Okay, now for the lay shaft, we have 1st gear. This one here, that was a fail due to the dogs, so we can put a cross in there. Now 2nd gear, which is this one, that was also a fail. Now don't forget, this is the one that marries into 2nd gear on the main shaft, so there's bound to be tooth damage when the breakage occurred, but it failed because of the damage to the dogs where the dogs engage. Definitely a fail. Okay, and lastly, 3rd gear, this one here on the lay shaft, that also failed due to damage on the dogs. So yeah, needs to be replaced. So we've got to put a cross on there. So 4th gear. Now that one had possibly a 1 bush, but again, it might be within spec. I need to find out. 4th gear, other than that, was a pass. So we can give that a tick on the initial inspection, as was 5th gear. 5th gear was also a pass, so we can put a tick on there. So now the only gears that we need to look at under the microscope camera are 4th and 5th on both the main shaft and the lay shaft. Now don't forget, also on the lay shaft we have this ends piece which engages 1st gear to the shaft, and we also failed that because of damage to the actual dogs. And end of the day, that's all it is, isn't it? It's got dogs and it's got some splines. That's all it does, and the dogs are worn. So we need to add that to our lay shaft. So we'll put it down here. Look, we'll just call it an end plate, end drive plate, and that failed. So we need one of those. Pedantic, I know. Okay, we're cooking on gas. We are getting there. There's not that many more gearbox components to check, but now it's time to crack open the old microscope camera. Now, I bought this one years ago when I first started this YouTube channel, and it was about $17. It was super cheap. It was on special offer. Got it off something on Facebook or something like that. And it's actually pretty good, but nowadays you can buy so much better. And it's on my wish list, and I will be replacing it for a better quality one at some point in the future. But it's all we've got for now, and it's still a benefit. So let me get it all set up with the laptop, and we're going to check 4th and 5th gear from the main shaft and the lay shaft up really closely. See if we can find any more kind of imperfections that the naked eye has missed. Right chaps, here we go. This is the setup. We have the microscope camera, and currently we're looking at 4th gear on the lay shaft, and that's the picture that you're going to see. Right, we'll get you in the tripod. And I've found this this microscope camera to be super useful. You should buy one. I'm going to manipulate the gear very slowly, and we can see quite clearly the condition of the tooth. And of course we've got the various little tiny imperfections in the casting. That's nothing to worry about. Obviously we've got a few scratches going on. That's probably debris that's gone through the tooth as well. You know, when that second gear failed. Just going to bring it across. We're going to look at each tooth. What we're looking for is damage. So you can see, hang on, where's my little scribe again? It's very difficult to do this. There we are. You see there's some damage just there, look. That was amazing how I got straight to that bit. So again, that wouldn't have been there during manufacture. That's because something has gone through mesh. So let's just bring it round to the next one. Oh yes, more damage on there, look. We're going to scan across that tooth. And really, as soon as we find something which would make it a fail, then obviously we don't need to continue with the inspection of that particular gear. We're not going to waste time. This is a big enough job as it is. Right, I'm going to lose track of where we've been, so let me get a marker pen. Hang on a second. Okay, I'm going to put a little mark on there, and that's our start tooth. Okay, you've got the idea of what we're doing now, so we'll just mosey our way across. We won't take too long on each. So there's some definite scuffing going on the edge of the gears here, look. Seems to be pretty common to most. And again there. And you can see what I was talking about regarding the burring on the top of the tooth here, look. You can see, hang on a minute, we're moving it around. Way. You can see there, look, there's a little ridge. Those lines, those vertical lines, are the machining marks. But you can see where the metal is now burred over the top very slightly due to the pressures created. And just wear and tear, really, I suppose, as well. But there's definitely some chewing up of the gear along that edge, isn't there? Wow, listen to the rain. And down that far side as well, on that one. Just there, at the top. Man, it's great to have good eyesight again. Look at that, you can see all sorts of stuff. Oh, there's another chip on that one. Just there, look. Another bit of chipped tooth, so it's not looking very well, is it? That one's not so bad. This is probably the best I've ever been able to use this camera, because we've got the gear mounted in the V-blocks. It's keeping perfect distance from the camera. It's pretty good, actually. Ooh, look at that! Another chip on the edge of the gear there, look, on the tooth. Now, some people may find this bit really boring, and my sincere apologies if that's the case. Even Marmite sat on a little bed giving up on me today. But If we want to get this right, we have to be absolutely certain that this gear warrants being refitted and not replaced. Ah, perfect. We are back at the start. Now what we haven't done is the other side of these teeth. So I'll have to remove the camera so you can see the other side now. Bear with me. Oakley dokley, right, this is the other side of the tooth there, other side of the gear. And you can see up here our little tiny yellow mark that we did. So we're looking on the other side of each tooth now. I'm just going to whiz this across. Lots of scoring on that outer edge there, look. Some teeth are worse than others. And if you just zoom back to the start point, there we go. And we can now scroll across and get a picture of each end of that tooth. And I'm looking at this for the first time with you guys. It's not like I've already checked it, so bear with me. Bit of a chunk missing out there. Scratches. Lots of scratches at that end. And looking at that one, see if I can get my little scriber thingy. Is it that one? That one there. Like you see, there's a bit of a. Actually, I think it's just a polished section. Not sure. Yeah, that's just polished. I don't think there's a bit missing on that. That's alright, so we'll keep going. Bit rough. So we're just scanning off across each of the teeth. And what we'll do is we'll have a look at that that casting imperfection next, just to see how bad that really is. But yeah, that's a perfect shot of how the tooth wears and it burrs over. Can you see here? Look, we've got jeez, got the actual burring up there. Look, very hard to do with my kind of. There you go. That burring there is the tooth wearing and bleeding over. That wasn't there when it was made nice and new. I'll tell you that. Right, we're not far from the end of checking this. Back to our yellow mark. There you go. Right, let's see if we can get it lined up so we can have a look at the dogs. Okay, remember this is fourth gear on the lay shaft. This actually is. This isn't the one that's got the imperfections, the casting marks. Well, I believe they are. That'll be on the main shaft. But what you can see here very closely now is the wear, how these dogs round off over time. You know, it's not. This is a problem, and as they get worse, that radius extends further and further down the flank. Right, so we'll spin around to the next one. Coming into shot now. There we go. Again, it's pretty rough along that edge there. Look, but not. You know, I would expect to see this on such an old bike. That one's not too bad. Okay, fifth gear. I've put another yellow line on there and the mark for us, so we know when to finish. And we can just scan across. Now remember, all drive, except for, ironically, in fifth gear, all drive goes through this gear. So it should show, realistically, quite a lot of wear. Just a little chip in the corner there. Now, is that, has it broken through the heart? Oh, you can even see my reflection in it. How cool is that? Okay, going left-handed now, because it's easier to get in that side. So around there, is that dirt? I have washed them off. I can't feel anything with a pick. Don't know. Hard to tell. Right, yes, I sprayed them all down with brake cleaner before we started to get all the bits of crap off the teeth. So what you can see here is not dirt, this is the metal. It's not looking too bad, is it, to be fair? Good old fifth gear lay shaft. Yeah, the minute we find one big chip, that's it, game over, isn't it? You've got to check everything. Oh, it's not looking too bad, really. It'd be nice to have a brand new gear to compare it to. Okay, that's that flank done on fifth. Let's now look at the other side of each of the teeth. Hey, we're doing pretty well at setup. That was quite quick. Okay, where is my yellow mark? Okay, yellow mark is there. Okay, we'll just make it a bit bigger so we can see it from this side. There we go. Perfect. Okay, let's check this side out and see if we can see any damage on this side. And you can see that part of the tooth here, that's not in contact. Hang on, where are we? That one there? Yes. That part's never been in contact. It doesn't make contact with the other gear at all. It's just still quite dull and not polished at all. It's not even a finished surface by the looks of it. So we can ignore all of that. Makes no difference whatsoever. Oh, there's a chip. You see that? It's dirt. We're okay. We can discount that bit and ignore it. Good. Be nice to save at least one gear in this gearbox, wouldn't it? Is that dirt as well? I did actually wash these things down. It is just dirt. Cool. Now remember, this fifth gear has no dogs. It's splined to the lay shaft, so we don't need to worry about those either, because they don't exist. So as long as the teeth all check out to be good. What's that? Is that dirt? It is. It's just dirt again. Wow. Okay. Just some very minor scoring, isn't there, on the surface, but there's no indication it's worn through the surface hardening, and there's no chips by the looks of it. I think we're going to be pretty good with this one. Where's that yellow mark? Have we gone? I think we've gone past it. I think we have. I think we've done the full trip. I'll have to review the footage, but I think we have. So, looking at this one, everything seems to be fine. I'll do a quick scan round for you. So this is all one side. There's that yellow dot. There he is. Okay, that's all one side. We'll flick that across. We'll put a yellow dot on this side, because I know some viewers go, oh, you missed that choke, oh, you know. So we like to cover things. So we'll just scan around these. Go a bit further across, can't we? There we go, look. Momentarily stopping at each one so you can inspect them yourself. And let me know in the comments if you think I've missed something. Because, you know, I need to know. My eyes are not great. That's just dirt. It's alright. Just relax. Calm down. Okay, I think we're there. Yes, we are. Perfect. Okay, so that is both gears now inspected, 4th and 5th gear on the lay shaft. Yes. What we could do while we're here, we could inspect the splines that are there to see how much wear, if there's any obvious wear on the splines whilst we've got it all set up. So give me a second to have a look at that. Okay, just a very quick look around now. This actually has still got some residue on it. You can see there, look. There's still oil. It must have leaked out from under the gear. But we can take a quick look at the edge of some of the splines. It all looks, that's down in a valley. That doesn't matter. Completely irrelevant. They all look nice and sharp, don't they? That's a gear. That's a 4th gear there, look. So we can move that out of the way for you. Very cool. And of course, we're moving back again now. There we go. So you can see a nice sharp edge on that spline. There's no indication of wear whatsoever. Actually, not that it matters, because this shaft is bent, isn't it? But that's what you would be looking for. So we're going to be fitting a new shaft anyway. Okay, there you go. Right, moving on. Okay, assuming there's still a viewer watching this video, because that was probably incredibly boring and it's going to be great fun for me to edit up as well. In summary, just pulling it out of the V-blocks, we know we're going to be replacing this shaft because we proved that yesterday. It's got 0.33 of a millimetre of run out, and on such a short shaft that is atrocious. So I think 4th and 5th gear are still okay. They are reusable. They'll just need transferring from this shaft to the new one, which means we've got to pull that one off, and we can do a little visual inspection of the bush in 4th gear at the same time while it's off. So that's done for now. That's done. What we still have to do is to inspect, bear with me, terrible camera work, Andy, on the main shaft, 4th and 5th. And what I'll do is I'll put them on the main shaft and into the V-blocks in the same way, and that way it keeps the camera exactly at the right distance away from the gears. Otherwise the focus goes way out, so it's a lot easier for me as well. Okay, let me get set up and we'll check it out. Oakley dokley. Right, we're looking at 4th gear on the main shaft. So this is 4th gear drive, and I'm just going to put a blob of yellow on there, as we always do. Oh, look at that. That sort of highlights a few imperfections, doesn't it, straight away? Okay, so what I'm going to do this time, a slightly different technique to before. I'm just going to roll the whole thing around on that end of each tooth, and then we'll move the camera to the other end. I'll move the shaft so you can see it. So we're just going to roll around and quickly, you've got a good idea now. See, again, you can see some more burring on the top of the tooth now, across there where the metal's rolled over the edge and created a bit of a step, which in fact you can almost hear the step. So again, it's an indication of wear. Right, so we're going to keep going, and we're looking for any imperfections, any chips, ideally, you know, damage, obvious damage. Shout out if you see anything. Now, I think there is some oil residue on here. I did wash the gears. Or maybe I didn't wash these gears, actually. No, I only washed the lay shaft, so you'll have to forgive me on that. Some of it will be oil. Lots to do when you're trying to do filming like this. Okay. We're getting there slowly. There's a lot more teeth on these gears. And some would say, Mr. Young, you're being pedantic using this kind of camera to inspect gears, but I want to make sure it's right. We don't miss anything. Right, okay, there we go. We've done a full circle. They all look to be usable, I think. Let me know if you disagree with that, though. Okay, we're going to shuffle across to the other end. There we go. We'll put another mark on there. There we go. Paint pens, you can't do without them these days. Right, we're still in focus. We are, near as damn it. Okay, coming round. Doesn't look too bad, does it? However, don't forget, this fourth gear, this is the one that had that pitting. Oh, look at the burrs on there, look. That's actually pretty impressive. We've got some burrs right down the far edge. God, this is hard work. Down there, look. It's enough to push the gear. Okay, but this one, don't forget, is the gear that's got what looks to be a casting imperfection on one of the dogs. But we're going to look at that a bit later on. It's actually pretty in focus, isn't it? It's pretty damn good. It's very hard to get this thing to focus. Yeah, there's a lot of wear on that gear, isn't there? A lot of burring on both sides. So I think this gear will have to be replaced. What we'll do, there we go, we're all the way around. What we'll do now is we'll have a little look to see on that casting imperfection on one of the dogs. Okay, this is that dog that we saw on fourth gear on the main shaft. And I just want to get my scriber in there and just, it might rotate, or hopefully not. No, that definitely has got imperfections on the surface. I'm just going to give it a clean. I'm just going to move the camera and give it a clean and get rid of all that oil residue. Right, there we go. That's as good as it gets. There is no oil on there now. I have blasted it off with brake cleaner. So we can see some pretty nasty sort of marks on the surface of there. I wonder if there's been something that's got in contact, it's been pressed into the surface. That liquid you can see is just a brake cleaner. But yeah, that's knackered. Okay, so we need a new one of those. So fourth gear on the main shaft needs to be replaced. Lots of camera stuff going on at the moment, it's getting a bit confusing. Right, the last gear to look at now is the main output gear that's mounted on the main shaft, and don't forget the sprocket mounts to these splines. There's a big nut that goes on there as well. On those, what is the threads, there's not a lot of them. So we're going to be checking the dogs and the teeth. The rest of it looks pretty good, to be fair. So, back to the microscope camera for the last time. Okay, let's do this reasonably quickly because you'll be all falling asleep now. Let me just put a yellow mark on that tooth. Yes, that's the one. There we go. I'll put one on the other end as well. There we go. Right. Very quickly. Not too quickly though, otherwise there's no point in doing it, right? So this is fifth gear output. So all drive through this gear except when in fifth. So all drive onto the face of each of these teeth except when in fifth gear, ironically. Okay, so we're just going to scan across. and we are looking for damage and wear. A few sort of minor surface scores on there. Doesn't look too badly worn on the peak of each tooth, does it? There's only a very small burr on there. Man, you've got to be so accurate at this thing. Around there, look. Very difficult. Give it a go sometime, you'll realise how hard it is. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll scan across one end of the teeth, and then we'll move the... I'll just slide across and we'll do the rest of them on the other side. Of the other end of the tooth, should I say. And we're looking for any major sort of chips and cracks and stuff. Let's bring it back a little bit so we can see the edge. Similar kind of markings, isn't it, to what was on 4th gear, where you've got that scuffage across the edge. Little tiny chip at the top, nothing to worry about. Right, you see all those marks? It's really bizarre why it's worn like that. And I am certain that they are not... That's not a manufacturing mark. Not at all. I'm sure it's not. Hang on, back across a little bit again. Now I know my friend Simon Raw will be watching this video at some point, so Simon, what do you think? Let me know in the comments, mate. Ooh, what's that? Ooh, that's nasty. Is that damage? I can see it from here actually. Just hold the gear so I can get the scribe raw across that. Yeah, that is definitely an indent in the tooth, and probably due to the debris when 2nd gear failed. Something flew across, like may have happened before, who knows, but that's definitely not good. I don't like that. Maybe I'm just being picky, but I don't like it. See if we've got any more. That looks okay. So again, just some light scuffing, but it's not ideal, is it? Okay, we have reached full circle, so we're going to scoot across the other end of that tooth. There we go, look. And we'll do the same thing going this way around. Is that dirt? I have washed it thoroughly this time. No, that's another mark in the metal. An imperfection. Another chip there, look. That's alright. That's alright. Still raining. God damn it. Ben's coming down today. He's going to be working on his Yamaha TDR 250. He's building a bike up from scratch. Big pile of bits at the moment, so I'm going to be tied up with that for the next few days. So there's another. That's quite deep, isn't it? Yeah, I can feel that with the pick. No doubt Alan will watch this video as well, and he can make a decision, a final decision on what gears he wants to replace, but at least he's got all the information now to make that call, because this one will be quite expensive, I think, to replace. Okay, I'm just going to move the gear to the centre of each tooth, and we're just going to flick around really quickly because we didn't cover the middle bit. on that. I just want to check that there's no huge chunks missing out in the middle of any of the teeth. There's no point in pretending to be thorough. You have to be thorough, right? If you miss something, it can bite you later on. Hey, that's a weird mark. What the hell? Why is there a line across there? Didn't see that before. Ah, it's just residue from being cleaned. That's alright, we're good. Phew. Ah, and there's that indent again. That's probably the worst bit we've found so far, is that bit there. We saw that previously. And on back to the middle again, we sort of veered off a little bit there. See, I don't like that. That's like it's gone through the case hardening, or there's been a fault when the gear was produced. Alright, it's alright, it's dirt. We're all good. Jeez, honestly, I cleaned this thing. Okay, we've actually gone beyond the yellow, so we've done it. Okay, right, just the dogs to check now. Okay, we're looking down the side of the gear, this being the side of the gear down here, and we can see the face of one of the, well, the drive flanks of one of the dogs. Just here, look. And again, we do have some minor sort of pitting going on. Yeah, I can feel it on the pick. I can't push too hard, otherwise it'll rotate, but I can feel that. Okay, not ideal. Let's just take it round to the next one. And this one has a little chunk missing out of the corner here. Again, nothing major, we can cope with that. The rest of it doesn't look too bad. I think there's some residue on there. If you get me a little tissue and give it a bit of a clean for you. There we go. Okay, I don't want to use a spray because it'll go on the camera lens, and that doesn't do them any good in the plastic. Okay, it's very shiny, so it's quite difficult to get it to focus. Okay, well that looks like just that is the only imperfection on that one on that side. Coming around to the next one. Let's give it a bit of a clean for you again. Nothing worse than a dirty flank, right? There we go. Okay, that one actually looks pretty good. That's a pass. Okay, we've just got the other side of those drive flanks. Okay, last bit. You're getting very, very, very bored of microscope cameras now, and you'll never go out and buy one. Slight imperfection there. Something's gone through it. I can feel that with the pick. There's definitely markings going on. Just spinning it round to the next one. That's pretty rough on that edge, isn't it? Look at it down here. I would say that this is the drive side, actually. Down there. That's pretty bad. So that will be damage due to engagement of fifth gear. Going down there. Okay, one left to go. There's only 3 on this one. And again, you can see down there, look, we've got a similar kind of damage on there where the edge is starting to break up. Again, it's nothing major, but it all, you know, it's all adding up. This gear may need to be replaced. and that's expensive. You know, you can see some scoring marks running down here as well. It's not nice and machined and smooth anymore. It's done some work. So there you go. I know, it's the wrong way around on the shaft. Who noticed that? That was deliberate because I had to get the other side of the flanks done. You know, and I was running out of room on the bench. So don't worry, we're going to be putting a new seal in there anyway. And possibly even a whole new gear. Don't know yet. Right, let's go over here and let's make a note of our new findings. Dum 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 dum. God, it must be lunchtime. I'm starving. Okay, so what did we find? I forget now. That's really good, isn't it? I have to watch the footage. So obviously we don't need to do microscope camera on any of those. Main shaft gears, fourth was a question mark. This needs to be replaced. We decided that that was bad, so that is now a cross. Fifth gear on the main shaft. Man, I'm going to let Alan decide on that one. It's still a bit ropey, to be honest. There's some damage. There is clear damage and wear on the flanks for the dogs. Now, lay shaft. We inspected these two gears and they were both okay. I was happy with those. You know, there was some minor imperfections but nothing major, so they're both still a pass. And obviously the end drive plates and all these we don't need to inspect because we've already condemned those. So in summary, at this point in time, for the main shaft we need a new first, second and third and fourth gear. Fifth gear is ambiguous. Alan can decide on that one, or further inspections maybe. For the lay shaft gears we need first, second and third and a new... Oh, you're off camera, hang on it, there we go. So for the lay shaft we need a new first gear, a new second gear, a new third gear. Fourth and fifth are okay, and the end drive plate also needs to be replaced. So there isn't that much left of the original gearbox. When it comes to the shafts, the actual lay shaft itself needs to be replaced. That's a fail, and that had 0.33 millimeters of run out. The main shaft, well, that was a pass, as it only had 0.01 millimeters of run out on the bench check. However, we're going to put it in the lathe and check it properly from end to end, so that might still fail. Right. Jeez, I'm pleased I'm not paying the bill. Ah, there you are. Yes, so the next job, I think, we've done all the gears, we've inspected the crap out of the gears, and most of them are going to need to be replaced. Next check is I'm going to make up some little mounts for this in the lathe. Shouldn't take me too long. And then we're going to mount it from either end using the little holes each end of the shaft. And don't forget, the clutch actuation rod runs through there, which is up there at the moment, so I can't show you. But yes. Can you hear that? It is actually hard. In fact, where's... Oh no, the torch has gone flat. You can't see that. So anyway, not to worry. We're going to mount that at either end, and then we can use the DTI on this section here and see if, basically taking into account this part of the shaft now that we've not yet tested, to see if that deviation increases from 0.01 of a millimeter. If it does, and it goes high enough, then it may well render this shaft requiring replacement as well, because don't forget, when those teeth came off, they went into mesh. And what that does is it forced the two shafts apart. They're actually top and bottom, but they force the two shafts apart momentarily. Now that can do many different things to gearboxes. It can even cause the casing to crack if it's bad enough, if there's enough force or the casing is a weak casing. In this case, it definitely bent the lay shaft I need to know, categorically, has it bent this? I don't think so. But it might have done, because don't forget, we've tested so far the part of the shaft which includes the clutch in the primary drive. This is the gearbox, the main part of the shaft within the gearbox, and it will be this area here that was subject to that huge force. It could well be bent. Let's go and find out. Here we go. It's all zeroed out. Oh no, that's 0.2 of a mil. Oh, 0.3 of a mil. Oh, 0.4 of a mil. Half a millimetre of deflection. Oh, it keeps going. 0.6 of a mil. Oh, 0.61 millimetres of deflection on the main shaft. I had a hunch that one was knackered as well. Oh no. This is getting really expensive. Sorry, Alan.
Oh, you're fucked.
I know you want to see the setup, so here you go. Look, we've got a centre in the chuck and another centre bit made up of some old bolts, to be fair, out the drawer. In fact, they were brand new bolts. I just cut the heads off and gave them a little bit of a chamfer. And the DTI is mounted on there, and no, it doesn't wobble. It's pretty good, look. For those that are keen, I do sort of know how to set it up properly. And of course the pin is perpendicular to the shaft in both planes, and we can do it live again if you want. Oh no. Every time I see it, it's like, wow, is it really that bad? And you know what? If you spin it fast enough, you can actually see the distortion. It's pretty amazing, to be honest. Well, there you go. Back to the bench. There we go. Right, so what was it? 0.61 millimeters. So main shaft is now a fail. Fail. And what do we say it was? We'll cross that out for a start. 0.61 millimeters of run out. So it appears my hunch was correct. The main shaft and the lay shaft have been severely bent by those two teeth going through mesh and forcing those two shafts apart. We're also going to need to inspect the engine casing for any possible signs of cracks, because that's a tremendous force to be inflicted on an old aluminum casting. What's left to do on this video? Well, we've still got the selector forks to inspect, and we've got that really weird rotary disky selector disky thing to look at as well. So without referring to the manual anymore, it's pretty obvious what we're looking for. I'll talk you through it. Here we go. Okay, go look at the selector forks. These are extremely important and could be bent or worn out, or many things. We'll find out shortly. Okay, now here is a schematic, a human drawing, in fact, before the age of computers, showing each of the three selector forks. So this one here, just for identification purposes, this is first gear selector fork, and it's pretty obvious. It's got a smaller dowel, so it's really easy to spot. That runs, don't forget, in that weird disky selector disc thingamajig. And so that's that one. I've labelled it up first for first gear. Now the next one is this one. This also runs on the lay shaft gears, and this is called the third gear selector fork. And you'll notice that the dowel here, that again runs in that rotary disc selector drum thingamajig disc thing, is to one end. So that's the third gear one, just for identification purposes before we start to take a good look at them. And lastly is this selector fork, which changes, moves fourth gear drive around on the shaft. That's splined to the shaft, as we've already seen, and it sits in that orientation, and the dowel is almost in the middle between the two, and it sits in that orientation with the arrow upwards, and that's about all I can say about it, really. That's what it is. And that would move fourth gear from side to side to either engage third or for the fifth gear drive as well. So pretty cool. Okay, so that's that bit out of the way. You've got an idea of what they are. Now, as regards inspection, let's start with, that's the main, get rid of that one. That's third, get rid of that one. First gear. Okay, now don't forget, first gear also engages, no, it actually only does first gear, this one, so that's pretty cool. And we know that the first gear was okay. However, what we're looking for here is if there's any thrust created in the gearbox due to wear on the dogs, remember we were talking about being chamfered before, then that can cause the gears to push apart under heavy load, and if that happens, it creates wear on the selector fork, because end of the day it's trying to keep it in gear. And if there's any, and they're not designed to take thrust, you know, they're not particularly strong. They're only designed to put the gear into mesh by sliding across slightly. And if we get any thrust, and I think this is a machining ridge here, because if that was full width, then it wouldn't actually fit into the gear. Let me grab the gear, hang on. Right, it's always good to keep referencing back, otherwise you can quickly get lost with the gearbox, so we'll get rid of that. This is first gear off the lay shaft. There we go. And this sits in there like that. It's a good tight fit, and there is realistically very little slop up and down. So if that was the original thickness of the selector fork, and we thought that possibly this could be down to wear caused by thrust, then that would fit into there, and it doesn't. It clearly doesn't. It's way too thick. So that's a machined surface to bring the thickness of that selector fork down to operate in the groove on the back of the gear. So we can discount that. We don't need to worry about that. There's no wear. It's good. So all we're looking at really, the polishing marks on the back of the selector fork here, and all of that's fine. There's no real scuffage as such around there. It's all pretty smooth, and again on this side here you can just see where there's been contact points where it's shiny here, and that's normal, you know, it's not really an issue. This seems to be in pretty good order. One of the downsides of this style of gearbox is once it's all built up, it's actually quite difficult to see if these are bent. You know, when you select a gear, it should fully engage the gear, the dogs, onto the adjacent, you know, pair of dogs. It should be hard up. If it's like that, then you know that something's not right, and for some reason it's not being pushed into gear enough. The gear hasn't been moved enough, and that could be because this part of the selector fork is actually bent that way, in this case that way, you know, so it's not actually pushing the gear all the way across. If that was the case, you would normally see more wear in one area on here. It wouldn't be even all the way around, because, you know, if it's not bent, then it's going to sit, oh, that way around, sorry. It's going to sit like that, and if it's all to cock like that at an angle, then of course it's not going to wear evenly, is it? But this one feels pretty good. Man, there's not a lot of clearance on that, is there? Jeez. It feels pretty good. What we can do is we can put the shaft back in here, and these should be at 90 degrees perpendicular to the shaft. So we could put a square across the shaft with this in, and see if it pretty much lines up with the contact surface on there. We should do that. That's a good idea, Andy. Oakley dokley. Right, we've got the selector shaft just gripped in the vise vertically. We've got that first gear selector fork on the shaft, and the first thing I want to check is play side to side on the shaft, and that's actually pretty good. There's not a lot of movement on that. But what I want to really check is to make sure that this surface here this surface here is perpendicular to the shaft itself. That's very important. If it isn't, it's an indication that the selector is bent, the fork is bent. So, to do that, I'm going to use an engineer's square against the shaft, and I'm going to put the ruler across two flanks of where it makes contact with the gear. If I can do that with my hands. Don't know if I can or not, actually. There we go, we're about on there. I could clamp it with some mole grips. Let me do that, and then I can do more stuff. Now, I don't want to put any marks into the actual contact point on the selector fork because that would be bad, but I do really need to hold it in place. So, oh, there we go, look, perfect. Okay, so the question is the face of the ruler, which is pretty damn straight, perpendicular to the actual square? Yes, I would pass that. That's okay. Right, let's get rid of that one. So, selector for the first gear is a pass. That's good. We like that one. Let's try this one. So we'll do the same thing with this. This one is third gear selector. It sits on the lay shaft as well. Okay, that should work. And again, we can put the ruler across the flanks with the old mole grips. Now I'll need to adjust them a bit because this one's a bit thicker. And I'm only lightly clamping it in place, so we shouldn't be causing any harm to the fork itself. And again, we can do the same check. Oh, hang on, I'm too far away. Donkey. Let's flick that around the other way, so we've got a bit more room to work. There we go, look. It's just a case of sort of using a bit of logic. In fact, let's stick that over that side. There we go, that should work. And then we can come down with the square and we can just check that that's about perpendicular. Oh, there's a bit of a gap. Let me go and find a piece of steel which we know is dead flat, because this ruler is a little bit ambiguous. Okay, we'll try again. I've found this bit of flat bar which does appear to be quite straight, which is very important for this kind of check. Now that looks pretty good. Let's see how that works out with the square. Yes, that is a pass. Excellent. That's what we like. So we'll do the other one while we're on. Now this one goes onto the main shaft, and again that's a machine surface around the top, so we'll put the plate onto there. Would be ideal to use something other than mole grips, but it's alright, we're sort of within tolerance. Okay, and this one. Yes, that is also perfect. Super job. Okay, so that rig's now finished with. We can get rid of all these bits. Stick that over there. We should also check this for bendage as well, shouldn't we? I'm assuming with that test that it's not bent. Okay, what else do we need to do? We need to check these two for any signs of wear or damage. Okay, so let's do, that's the main, we'll do that one last. This is the other one that runs on the third gear on the lay shaft. And we need to look for any kind of adverse wear where it makes contact with the gear. And we do have actually Can you see the polished mark? It sort of starts here and finishes here. It's not in contact all the way around, which could be a sign that there is possibly a little bit of bend going on. However, it's extremely minor. There's no real step going on there. So, it doesn't look burnt or anything like that. There's contact pretty much all the way around on this side. Now, there is a little bit of wear on this side. There's a bit of a step. So when that's pushing it into gear that way, remember this one works both ways, when it's pushing it into gear that way, it's not quite going to push it as far as it should do, because there is a little tiny step, but it's, man, it's not a lot. Maybe 0.1 of a mil maybe. And it's definitely a wear step, because that step doesn't exist down here. Unless it's where they've machined it. That's the only thing. Maybe they did a final machine on it and the casting was a little bit thinner down here than it was up here. That could be the case. So I think that one's alright to reuse. We don't need a new one of those. The main. Okay, looking at the back, this one runs on 4th gear on the main shaft, and it's absolutely perfect around the backside here. And that is a machine surface looking at it. It's got some little machining marks in there. And on this side again, we've got, can you see, we've got a polished area here, but not around here. But this again, it looks like a machining because it goes way beyond where the actual contact is on the gear, the same kind of marks. So that one looks pretty good as well. I'm not too concerned. There's no burring, there's no bluing, it hasn't got hot, there's no thrust being developed in that gearbox, which is excellent. That is a pass. Okay, we've got 2 last components to check on this video. There's still a lot more checks to do on the bike, don't get me wrong. On this video, rather than bore you to death, we're going to check the selector disc, as they call it, and we also need to have a quick look at the gear, the sprocket on here as well. If that's badly worn or damaged, that's going to affect slick gear change. And I use the word slick in the loosest sense, given the fact it's an old British bike. So we'll do that, and as an extra bit of bonus footage, as I would say, we're just going to make damn sure that this isn't bent as well. It shouldn't be, but we'll just double check to eliminate it. The last thing I want to do is build up a gearbox where there's a part that I've missed that's faulty, you know. Okay, back down to the bench. Okay, we've got Torchy on the job. We'll do the shaft last. Let's have a quick look at this. And the lugs, in fact, hang on, the lugs, or the dowels you could call them, these parts of the selector fork, they basically run in the grooves on this disc. Now, 2 of the grooves are the same width, and the first gear has a smaller dowel. The first gear selector fork has a smaller dowel, and that goes in this groove on this side here. Now, what we're looking for is wear, and to do that we need to look across and look actually on the sides here for any kind of wear or burring, and that one looks pretty damn good, to be honest. Again, we'll just check this top side, and it needs to be nice and smooth, because if it's not smooth, then again it's gonna be a bit jerky on the gear changes, you know. It's not going to flow nicely as that dowel through this groove. So just make sure you check it all the way around. And I mean, you know, this is only, they don't use this kind of stuff anymore, this design. It's only on the old bikes, and this is the first time I've ever come across it. So I'm just working my way around to make sure that there's nothing obvious as wear. It's all nice and smooth. It's a little bit notchy in there, which is a bit of a shame. There's a bit of damage down there as well, actually. And it's not really something you can smooth out, because if we start to take away some of this metal to get rid of the imperfection, then it's going to allow more slop on the actual selector fork itself, and that's bad. You know, gearboxes are supposed to be nice and accurate. But we'll keep going. Again, Alan can make the final call. Whoa, what's that? Okay, so hopefully you can see that. we've got on this one that runs around the inner, and obviously it has some pretty tight radiuses to get round on the inner one, is we've got in there, we've got a mark, a pretty significant mark, a big groove running down that peak, and we've got another one in there as well. And the same would apply to this one here, this peak as well. It's got a nasty groove in it, quite a deep groove in fact. That microscope camera would have been good for this bit, it would make it look really bad. So, to be fair, this could well be a fail. Now this gear is integral to, it's riveted to the actual components, so you can't just replace the gear on its own by the looks of it. It's all one piece. So I think realistically, given those 3 points of damage on there, we really should be replacing this. I wasn't expecting that. I really wasn't. I actually thought that this would be fine. Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear. But we don't know the history of this. There's also another groove. Can you see it under there? Look. Can I get it? Oh, it's more obvious from this side. Just down there. See if we can get some light on it for you. That might work. Just in there. There's another similar kind of groove going on. You can hear it on the pick. So I think my recommendation would be to replace this. And it'd be interesting to see if the new one doesn't have these. It's really weird that they've all got it. There's one there on the peaks. There's one there, and there's one there. And I wouldn't expect to see that groove there, because the peak, there's not a lot of metal there, and it's going to wear a lot quicker. So you don't want to be deliberately cutting some of that out. And how would they machine that anyway, to be honest? How would that be machined at the factory? It must be wear. But if you're familiar with Triumph Bonneville gearboxes and you go, no, they're all like that, then let me know in the comments, and then I'll take it off the list. But as it stands, we need a new one of these too. God damn it. Right, let's get it set up to the needle at the top. Oh, nearly. There we go, that'll do. And we've got movement up and down. Yes, we have. Perfect. Okay, I'm just going to rotate this selector shaft now, and we'll see what kind of movement we've got on that one. What are we up to now? 0.02 of a millimeter. Yeah, almost. There we go, let's try again. Yeah, we have. Near as damn it, 0.02 of a millimeter. Yes, we have. There we go, look. Okay, is that a pass or a fail? I'll have to check the manual and see what it says. Stamp out the flicker. There we go. Okay, so this selector shaft here, they call it number 6, which is the selector spindle. So we need to look for that in the specs. Now, just reading through the manual, this is the section that covers the gearbox specifications, and I can't see anywhere on there the selector spindle. We've got gear details, gearbox shafts. It gives us some diameters and bits and pieces. Doesn't give us any deflection amounts, so I'm going to render both those two shafts, especially the main shaft, absolutely foobard. Main bearings, lay shaft, first bush, gives us diameters and stuff, but it doesn't tell us the maximum run out on the selector shaft, or spindle in this case. So I need to keep looking. I'll let you know when I find it, if it's there. It's not in the manual. I've gone cover to cover. I can't find it anywhere. So we've got a 0.02 millimeters of deflection on the gear selector spindle. Do we let it go? I mean, don't forget, those selector forks have to be able to slide up and down here without any kind of jamming. It's got to be smooth. The smoother the operation, the better. And there are some minor marks, imperfections on this rod itself. There's no real wear on it as such. It's probably almost looks like rust marks. You see there, look. So I wonder how much it costs. Probably not a lot. So in fact there's quite a few down that end there, look. You can see those. I just rotate it round, there you go, look, there's quite a few in line there. So I don't know, maybe I'll add it to the list, eh? Maybe we should change that. Many people would let it go. But hey, it gives Alan a few more spares for his parts bin, doesn't it? Almost can't even feel them on my nail. Just. But it is not straight. It is slightly bent. And what that would do is it would cause the selector to kink across at a very slight angle. And remember we saw on some of the selector forks where there was a polishing on some part of the fork but not all of it. So the whole fork wasn't in contact with the groove in the gear. And this could cause that because it's quite a distance away from this shaft, and any slight bend in this shaft would cause the selector to run at a very slight angle. And that's bad because it's either going to try and over engage the gear and put stress on the selector mechanism, or if it's going the other way, then that gear, the dogs won't be fully engaged. Even half a mil can make all the difference. So I think we should replace this. The selectors are good, they look fine. This is slightly bent. It's going on the list. Sorry, Alan. Right, well, do we do a recap of the list? I don't think we need to do. I think, right, we should do, shouldn't we? We should do that. We'll sign out, hang on. Okay, so the parts that we need. Main shaft. We need first gear, second gear, third gear, fourth gear, fifth gear. I'll let Alan decide on that, but if he goes for a new fifth, he's going to need bearings and all sorts of stuff, and obviously we'll replace the seal anyway. And the gear may come with the bearings fitted in it, I don't know. As regards the lay shaft gears, we need first, second and third. Fourth and fifth are both a pass, whereas the end drive plate, that was also a fail. We're going to need one of those. And of course we need a new lay shaft because that had 0.33 of a millimeter run out, and we definitely need a new main shaft which has got almost double at 0.61 millimeters run out. And we also require a new selector spindle, it was called, wasn't it? That's a fail, and it had 0.02 millimeters of run out and pitting on the surface. So out of all those gearbox components, everything needs to be renewed other than the selector forks, which we know are good. Fifth gear may be okay on the main shaft, and fourth and fifth on the lay shaft are fine. Wow. So there you go. I know it's been another long video. These projects that Alan gives me are always very in-depth and detailed. It's the only way to be. And we also often find lots of problems, which makes the videos interesting, right? A lot more work for me anyway. Hopefully you found this video interesting. There will be lots more videos on this series of resurrecting the gearbox and drivetrain on an old 1978.5 Bonneville T140. Why not subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, and that way you won't miss out on any future videos being uploaded. We also have a live stream every other Sunday, so welcome to join in on that. Ask questions, I'll do what I can to help. Remember though, this is the first time I've ever worked on one of these bikes. It's a huge learning curve for me as well. And the bottom line is, if I can do it, you can do it. Sorry, Erico, I stole that from you, didn't I? If I can do it, you can do it. You know, it's all about just taking note of what you see, reading the manual, and maybe just applying a little bit of basic mechanical knowledge as well. You know, understanding how things work. And if you don't understand how it works, just read it again. Talk to a mate. Flick me an email. Talk to somebody. Because I've done that with this bike, and I'm learning with you. Now, you'll also find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can communicate through any of those portals. You can also flick me an email to andymechanic@live.co.uk, and I'll do my best to answer you. I will. I'm pretty busy, but I'll do my very best. Now, if you want to support the channel, and projects like this are not cheap, so a few dollars here and there does really make a difference, you can send that through via PayPal. Just use the andymechanic@live.co.uk email address and just send your coffers through. Any money that's received is always spent here in the workshop, whether it's on tools, parts, or just consumables for making the videos, whatever it is. And it's very much appreciated. And for all of those that have already donated and supported the channel over the years, man, without you guys, things would be a lot tougher, they really would. And we would... Stupid phone, it just flagged up with an update thing and stopped recording. My apologies. So yes, as I was saying, without the support that the channel's had over the last 6 or 7 years, we wouldn't be able to do the detailed work that we do, you know. It's down to you, really. I do this for you guys. You can also support the channel if you like through Patreon. Become a patron and you can set up a monthly payment of $5, $10, whatever you like. And that again all goes in the pot and helps us out immensely. Okay crew, well, it's about time that I sign off for today. Ben's just arrived, my eldest lad, my only lad to my knowledge. He's here and it'd be good to spend a bit of time with him too. So I'm going to sign off, and in the next video we're going to be focusing mainly on the primary drive. We've got the clutch to check, we've got the primary drive chain to measure. We're going to look at that slipper tensioner to see how warm the slipper is, because that's always in contact with the chain. Yes, it's covered in oil, but it's still going to wear. And we're going to look at the sprockets that the chain runs on and all that kind of stuff. Oh, and the clutch springs, we need to measure those as well. That'll be fun. Okay crew, well, till next time. Cheers, over and out. And you get the flip again.
Oh!
Yes!